In a world racing toward an AI-powered future, one unexpected player is rising faster than anyone anticipated: Saudi Arabia. While the West debates regulations and ethics, the kingdom is building AI megastructures in the desert, partnering with the world's most powerful tech companies, from Nvidia and Google to Tesla, Palantir, and Humane. But this isn't just about innovation. It's a geopolitical shift. A new kind of power is emerging, not from oil, but from data. Welcome to the AI frontier, where wealth, energy, and ambition converge, and where the future might just be written by silicon in the sand.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a close look at a pretty major development in the world of AI.
Yeah, this news about Saudi Arabia launching their AI company Humane and this, well, massive partnership they've struck with Nvidia.
Exactly, building some serious AI infrastructure. We've pulled together insights from, some big names: Jensen Huang at Nvidia, Alex Karp from Palantir.
Secretary Mnuchin, even Elon Musk weighed in, so a lot of different angles.
Right, and our goal here is pretty straightforward. Figure out what this really means, the bigger AI trends it points to, and the potential global impact, all without getting too lost in the weeds, technically speaking.
Well, the first thing that jumps out is just the sheer scale.
Yeah.
Humane's launch wasn't just talk. They announced a 500-megawatt deployment of Nvidia's latest AI chips.
500 megawatts. Okay, put that in perspective for us.
Well, Jensen Huang recently showed off what he called two Blackwells, just like a tiny piece of this kind of setup. And those two together draw about 2,500 watts. So 500 megawatts is a lot.
Whack.
And Huang himself, he described this whole thing as basically building an AI manufacturing industry. He used the term AI factories.
AI factories powered by what? Saudi Arabia's energy resources, presumably?
Exactly. That's the key enabler here. You need massive amounts of power for this kind of computation. Think industrial scale.
And it doesn't stop there, right? Humane's goal is even bigger.
Yeah, they're aiming for, get this, 1.9 gigawatts of AI infrastructure by 2030.
1.9 gigawatts. That's staggering. It really shows the long-term vision here.
Absolutely. To give you an idea, 1.9 gigawatts could power millions of homes. It's not just an upgrade, it's a totally different level of computational power.
So you have this massive foundation being built, but the conversation also shifted to how AI itself is changing, didn't it?
It did. Jensen Huang talked about these sort of three eras of AI that we've seen so far. First was perception AI.
Okay, like AI learning to recognize objects in photos or understand speech.
Precisely. Then came the second era, generative AI. That's the stuff creating content.
Right.
Writing text, making images, that kind of thing.
ChatGPT, Midjourney, all that.
Exactly. And now, he says, we're in the era of reasoning AI, sometimes called agentic AI.
Agentic AI. So
Yeah.
this is where AI starts to solve problems, use tools, act more independently.
Yes, it can reason, plan, use other software or data to achieve goals. Think of a really smart assistant that can actually do things for you.
Okay, so we've gone from seeing to creating to reasoning and acting in the digital world. But then Huang mentioned a fourth era emerging.
He did, and this one's fascinating. Physical AI.
Physical AI. What does that involve?
It's about teaching AI the fundamental rules of the physical world. Things we take for granted, like gravity, cause and effect, object permanence, basic common sense about how stuff works.
Why is that so important?
Well, the idea is if you combine that physical understanding with the perception generation and reasoning capabilities AI already has.
You get smarter robots.
Potentially, yes. Much more sophisticated robots. Embodied intelligence that can interact with the physical world in a really nuanced way. Not just following instructions, but understanding the context of its actions in the environment.
Okay, that sounds like a major shift. Moving AI out of just computers and into the real physical world with genuine understanding. Huge implications there for manufacturing, logistics, even service robots.
Definitely. Now, shifting gears slightly, there were some strong opinions voiced about who's actually leading the charge in AI right now, globally.
Ah, yes, Alex Karp from Palantir. He had some pretty direct thoughts.
He did. He basically said the U.S. and the Middle East, specifically calling out Saudi Arabia, are the ones really running with AI's potential right now.
Really? What was his reasoning?
He talked about seeing a real can-do attitude there, a focus on meritocracy and impressive engineering excellence in Saudi Arabia's tech scene.
That's quite a statement, especially compared to traditional tech hubs. Did he contrast that with anywhere else?
Yeah, he sort of implied Europe was moving at a, let's say, more cautious pace with AI adoption. It's an interesting take on the global map right now.
It certainly is. It raises questions about different national strategies. But okay, let's get back to the applications. What's this AI actually doing? Ruth Porat from Google mentioned AlphaFold.
Ah, yes, AlphaFold. That's the AI that predicts protein structures, right? Huge deal in biology.
Huge. Nobel Prize winning level stuff. And Porat was highlighting its impact on drug discovery.
Exactly. She suggested we could see drugs developed entirely by AI getting FDA approval pretty soon. That could totally change how we find new medicines.
A fundamental shift. And were there examples from within Saudi Arabia itself?
Yes, quite a few actually, ranging from, practical things like streamlining government services apparently. Getting a passport renewed can take just 5 minutes now.
5 minutes. Okay, that's impressive efficiency.
But also some really cutting-edge medical stuff, like nanorobots using CRISPR gene editing tech.
Wait, nanorobots with CRISPR for treating...
Things like sickle cell disease, high cholesterol. And the claim is it significantly cuts down treatment costs. Sounds almost like science fiction, doesn't it?
It really does. And they're using agentic AI, too.
Yeah, to improve government operations and also within Aramco, their big oil company. They have this system called MetaBrain to optimize things.
NetBrain. So applying AI across the board from public services to core industries. And you mentioned physical AI earlier.
Right. There was even a report of the first fully robotic heart transplant. So these aren't just theoretical ideas. They seem to be actively deploying this tech.
It's clear they're not just buying the hardware. They're pushing the applications hard.
Which brings us to the idea of ecosystems, right? David Reckorden talked about that.
He did. His point was basically that for the U.S. to, quote, win the AI race, it needs to build a really strong partner ecosystem.
Like how successful tech companies created app stores or standards, let others build on their platform.
Exactly that model. Encourage innovation around your core technology. But he also had some criticism, particularly about restricting technology spread. The Biden diffusion rule he mentioned. What was the concern there?
His argument was that putting broad limits on sharing U.S. tech, even with allies like Saudi Arabia, not just adversaries, could actually backfire.
How so?
He used this analogy like, imagine an iPhone diffusion rule. It could stifle innovation and collaboration globally. His view is that letting trusted partners use and build on U.S. tech actually strengthens the U.S. position overall.
Okay, that makes sense. Enable your friends. Did he address the risk of technology falling into the wrong hands?
Yeah, he made a pretty practical point. Modern AI infrastructure, these massive server racks with thousands of GPUs, isn't exactly easy to smuggle.
Right, you can't stuff that in a suitcase.
So he suggested maybe focusing on things like monitoring data centers is more effective than just blocking collaboration with partners altogether. Manage the diversion risk intelligently.
That seems logical. Okay, so infrastructure, applications, ecosystems. What about the bigger economic picture? We heard from Secretary Mnuchin.
Right, he was outlining President Trump's economic agenda. Things like rethinking trade deals, making the 2017 tax cuts permanent, and cutting regulations.
The goal being
to make the U.S. the absolute best place in the world for investment, using tax policy like 100% expensing for factories and equipment and less burdensome regulatory environment to attract capital.
Trying to spur growth without inflation, basically. He mentioned investment flowing in and potential trade deals, too.
Yes. Talked about significant investment coming into the U.S., a possible historic trade agreement with the U.K., and a breakthrough agreement with China. Then, of course, you had Elon Musk's perspective.
Always looking far ahead. What was his vision?
Typically ambitious. He talked about a future with potentially tens of billions of humanoid robots.
Tens of billions. Doing what?
Integrated into the economy, potentially leading to something like universal high income. He mentioned the Culture Book series by Ian Banks as a sort of positive AI future, not a dystopia.
Universal high income. Wow, that's a big thought. Did he connect this to current projects?
Touched on Tesla's Optimus robot. Apparently one did the Trump dance.
Okay.
And mentioned plans for robo-taxis in Saudi Arabia, plus getting Starlink approved for ships and planes there. Also, the Boring Company's tunnels as a traffic solution. His involvement seems pretty broad.
Definitely sounds like it. And his own AI company, XAI, what's the goal there?
He framed it as building a maximally truth-seeking AI. Basically an AI designed to understand the universe, answer the really big fundamental questions.
A philosophical goal for AI. Interesting. So, wrapping things up, the discussion also came back to the U.S.-Saudi relationship itself.
Yeah, emphasizing the long history, 92 years, but also highlighting this major shift happening in Saudi Arabia, moving away from just being an energy economy.
Towards digital innovation.
Exactly. And there was specific mention of women's growing role in their tech sector, which is significant. Both President Trump and Saudi leaders pointed to these huge transformations.
Things like NEOM, that futuristic city project.
NEO, hosting massive events like the World Cup, the World Expo. It paints a picture of a country with very ambitious plans.
And the point was even made that their non-oil industries combined are now bigger than the oil sector economically.
That was the claim, yeah.
Yeah.
A really fundamental economic shift, if true.
Okay, so let's try to pull this all together. We've seen Saudi Arabia making a huge, very visible investment in AI infrastructure with Nvidia and Humane.
Right. And we've looked at how AI itself is evolving rapidly, perception, generation, reasoning, and now this idea of physical AI.
Plus, these optimistic views, particularly from folks like Karp, about the U.S. and Saudi Arabia potentially leading the way, even if others are more cautious.
And the potential for really transformative applications seems enormous: healthcare, government, daily life.
Absolutely. And it really underscores how technology, government policy, and these global partnerships are all tangled together in shaping what happens next with AI.
It's a complex interplay for sure.
So, thinking about all this, the huge ambitions, the speed of development, here's something for you, our listeners, to mull over. What do you think are the biggest, maybe the most profound societal changes we should brace ourselves for in the next few years because of this AI-driven transformation that seems to be accelerating so quickly?
That's a big question to end on.
It is. That wraps up this deep dive. Join us next time as we explore another fascinating topic.